Have you ever found yourself chasing a goal, just all in, maximum effort, getting the promotion, buying the thing, only to finally get it and realize the actual satisfaction, the liking of it is just gone in a flash?
And then you're immediately on to the next chase.
Immediately.
That paradox right there, that huge gap between the chase and the catch, is really the heart of what we're getting into today.
It really is. We are doing a deep dive into motivation and emotion, which are, about as fundamental as it gets for human behavior.
Absolutely. Our mission here is to unpack the psychological and the neurobiological models that explain why we pursue goals in the first place.
And how our internal drives are built, and maybe most importantly, what the science says about that critical difference between wanting something and, actually enjoying it.
So let's start with motivation. It's really just that internal state that propels goal-directed behavior. It's the engine.
The thing that gets us moving.
Exactly. The word itself comes from Latin, mover, to move. And emotion is, well, it's the state that colors that movement. It's got three parts. The thing in the environment.
The stimulus.
The stimulus, right. Then the physiological response, your heart racing, that shallow breathing. And then finally the cognitive label you put on it. Is this fear? Is it attraction? Is it just drive?
Okay, so let's unpack that motivation engine.
Yeah.
Because it isn't just one simple switch, right? It's more complex.
Oh, way more. Researchers break it down into three main components to figure out how intensely you're really engaging with something.
And the first one is direction.
That's right, direction. What is the specific goal you're choosing? And it has to be specific, not just I want to lose weight. It needs to be, say, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week.
It's the what, then you have the how much.
Intensity.
Intensity. Yeah, that's the sheer energy you're putting in. Are you just kind of casually doing the task, or are you all in, pulling out all the stops? It's the depth of your effort.
And the last one, persistence, feels like the most important. It often is, yeah. Persistence is the duration. It's how long you stay dedicated to that activity, especially when things get hard or boring or you fail. That's the real test.
So once we know the components of the drive, we have to look at where it's coming from. We talked all the time about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. How different are they, really?
They're fundamentally different. Intrinsic motivation is kind of the gold standard. It comes from inside, from pure enjoyment or curiosity or finding meaning in the task itself.
This is the most self-determined.
The most. And that's why it's linked to better persistence, greater well-being, all the good stuff.
So doing a crossword puzzle just because you love it, that's intrinsic.
Exactly. But if you're only doing that puzzle because someone's going to give you $20 for finishing it, that's extrinsic.
The drive is coming from the outside.
Right. Rewards, recognition, or even avoiding something bad, like the fear of being punished. And look, extrinsic rewards are necessary. We all need a paycheck. But they come with this really interesting psychological catch. It's called the over-justification effect.
Ah, yes. This is the finding that giving someone an external reward can actually kill their internal drive.
It completely undermines it. It's a huge insight for managers, for parents, for anyone. If you offer a big external reward for a task that someone already enjoys.
Like a kid who loves to draw.
Perfect example. If you start paying them for every drawing, they often stop doing it for fun. They start doing it only for the prize. You've essentially crowded out their natural interest. The joy gets replaced by pressure.
That makes perfect sense. So if intrinsic motivation is the fuel we want, the big question is, how do we cultivate it?
And that leads us perfectly into self-determination theory, or SDT.
Which is basically a roadmap for this. It focuses on 3 innate and universal psychological needs.
That's the core idea. SDT says that for anyone, in any culture, to really achieve growth and peak motivation, these 3 needs have to be met. The first one is autonomy.
The need to feel like you're in the driver's seat.
Precisely. That feeling of control over your own goals, your own behaviors. You need to feel like your actions can actually cause real change, that you're not just a puppet.
Without that, you're just complying. You're not committed.
Not at all. The second need is competence.
Okay, so that's about feeling effective.
Feeling capable. It's the drive to master tasks, to learn new skills. When you get feedback that shows you're actually getting better, you're way more likely to stick with hard goals.
Makes sense. And the third part of the trifecta
is connection, or as they call it, relatedness. It's that basic human need to feel a sense of belonging, to feel attached to other people.
So autonomy, competence, and connection.
When those 3 are fulfilled, intrinsic motivation just It blossoms. It doesn't have to be forced.
And the great thing about SDT is you can see it in action everywhere. I mean,
Sure.
think about education.
Oh, absolutely. A teacher can foster this by giving students choices, real choices, about how they complete a project. That feeds their sense of autonomy.
Instead of just a rigid set of instructions.
Exactly. And for competence, you give them unexpected, genuine, positive feedback when they do well. Not just good job, but something specific that validates their skill.
Right. That was a really clever way to solve that problem. That's way better than just a gold star.
Infinitely better. And in the workplace, it's the same thing. Leaders can build this by avoiding micromanagement, giving their teams real ownership over projects.
Trusting them.
Trusting them to solve the problem rather than just follow a checklist. That's how you get those high-performing, highly motivated teams.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. How does all this motivation and drive play out under pressure? We have this idea that a little bit of stress is good for performance, but is more always better.
Not at all. That's
Yeah.
the core idea behind the classic Yerkes-Dodson law. It's this empirical relationship between your level of arousal like stress or pressure and your performance.
And it's usually shown as an inverted U-shaped curve,
Where's the one? Performance gets better as your arousal goes up, but only to a certain point,
an optimal point.
an optimal point. And if the arousal gets too high past that point, your performance just tanks. You start to panic, your focus narrows, you can't think clearly.
We've all been there. Taking a test and your mind just goes blank from the stress.
That's a perfect example. And that optimal point changes depending on the task. For something really complex, like, say, surgery, you need a much lower level of arousal to stay focused.
But for something simple or something that needs stamina, like lifting weights, a higher level of arousal can actually help.
Exactly. But that model, it feels a little static, doesn't it? It assumes we're always striving for one single ideal state.
It does. And I know some researchers, especially the ones behind reversal theory, they argue that our minds are way more dynamic than that. They talk about something called beasability.
Reversal theory is a fascinating counterargument. It directly opposes that simple optimal arousal idea. It says that we are constantly reversing or switching between opposite motivational states. We're never fixed.
So what's the key opposition? What are we switching between?
The most important one is the switch between the serious state, they call it telic, and the playful or paratelic state.
Okay, what's the difference?
When you're in the serious telic state, you're focused on a future goal, something that has to get done. In that state, high arousal feels bad. It's anxiety. It's stress.
You need to be calm to function.
You do, but
Yeah.
if you suddenly reverse into the playful paratelic state, that exact same high arousal, it flips.
And it becomes excitement.
It becomes excitement, joy, thrill, because now you're focused on the activity itself, in the moment, not on some far-off goal.
And that explains so much. It explains why we ride roller coasters or watch scary movies. The arousal is off the charts, but the interpretation is completely different.
Right, and reversal theory has a concept for this. It's called the protective frame. When you're in that playful state, the intense fear, which would be terrible in a real-life situation, it transforms into pleasure because the danger is contained.
It's in a psychological safety bubble. You know you're not actually going to get hurt.
Precisely. The threat feels real, but the frame protects you. And that allows the anxious arousal to be experienced as what they call parapathic emotions.
A mix of fear and fun.
It's being thrilled because the danger is contained. We get to feel the high stakes without the real-world consequences.
So now let's get down to the brain itself, to the neurochemistry. For the longest time, the chemical we all associated with reward was dopamine. High dopamine, high pleasure.
Oh, it's a simple story, yeah. But that equation has been pretty definitively broken. The leading theory now, the incentive salience hypothesis, makes a really strong case that dopamine's main job is to cause wanting.
Wanting, not liking.
Exactly. Dopamine drives the motivation, the attraction, the chase. It's not the feeling of pleasure itself.
So wanting is the neurological push to go get the reward.
And liking is the actual hedonic satisfaction you feel when you get it. And they're run by different systems in the brain. Wanting is driven by the mesolimbic dopamine system.
And liking.
That's mediated by separate systems, mainly involving opioids and what they call hedonic hotspots.
What's the best evidence that these two things are truly separate?
The classic experiments were done with rats and sugar water. So researchers found they could mess with the rats' dopamine systems. When they suppressed dopamine, the rat's willingness to work for the sugar to press a lever, it just plummeted. Their wanting was gone.
But what about their liking?
That's the key. If you just gave them the sugar water directly, their liking reactions, the little facial expressions they make, were totally unchanged. It didn't matter if their dopamine was high or low.
So the brain systems for motivation and for pleasure are literally in different places.
They're dissociable.
Mm.
And this completely changes how we think about things like addiction.
It must.
It gives us the incentive sensitization theory of addiction. Addictive drugs, over time, they sensitize that dopamine wanting system. They crank it up permanently.
So the wanting gets stronger and stronger.
Overwhelmingly strong. While the liking, the actual pleasure from the drug, often decreases over time. And that explains the compulsive seeking. The person is trapped, chasing a high they might not even enjoy anymore.
The chase becomes everything, even when the satisfaction is gone. That's a broken loop.
It is. And there's one more little wrinkle with dopamine. We used to think it was the reward learning signal itself, the thing that calculates a prediction error when a reward is a surprise.
Right, the idea that dopamine spikes when something is better than you expected.
Well, the newer research suggests dopamine isn't the calculator. It's more like the broadcaster.
What do you mean?
The learning and the calculation of that surprise signal happen elsewhere in the brain. Dopamine's job is to then take that information, that this reward has a high value, and broadcast it everywhere to drive future behavior. It's the messenger, not the mathematician.
That's a subtle but really important distinction. Okay, as we start to pull all this together, let's go back from the brain to behavior. How do these deep states of motivation and emotion actually show up on the outside?
In a clinical setting, we make a really important distinction between mood and affect.
Right, and you had a great analogy for this. Mood is the climate.
Mood is the emotional climate. It's your pervasive, sustained internal state. It's subjective. You'd say something like, I've been feeling irritable for weeks. It's the background emotional weather.
Whereas affect is the moment-to-moment weather.
Exactly. Affect is the immediate emotional expression that I, as an observer, can see on your face, in your tone of voice, your posture. It can change from second to second in a conversation.
And the key thing for a clinician is whether those two things line up.
That's the critical distinction. Your affect can be congruent. You feel sad, you look sad. But it can also be incongruent. A patient might tell me their mood is improving, but their affect is still completely flat or withdrawn. I use their affect as a real-time reading of that deeper, sustained mood.
So we've really covered a lot of ground here. We started with the basic architecture of motivation, then went into self-determination theories, big three: autonomy, competence, and relatedness.
Then we looked at performance, contrasting that static Yerkes-Dodson curve with reversal theory's much more dynamic, base-stable model.
And we ended up deep in the brain, pulling apart the neurochemistry of wanting, which is dopamine, from the separate system of liking, which is more about opioids.
It's a journey from behavior all the way down to the molecule and back again.
And this whole journey through these dynamic, shifting states brings us back to that one idea from reversal theory that really stands out: psychodiversity.
It's such a powerful final thought. We have this popular idea that a healthy person is someone with a single, stable, consistent personality. Psychodiversity just flips that on its head.
It suggests that health isn't about being stable.
It's about being flexible. It suggests that a truly well-rounded, successful person is defined by their ability to access and use all of their opposing motivational states.
So it's not about being a serious person or a playful person.
No, it's about having the ability to be serious when you need to be and playful when the moment calls for it, to be conforming or rebellious, to shift your inner operating system to match the demands of the world outside.
So the biggest takeaway for you, listening, might be that the goal isn't to find one single optimal state of being. It's to master the art of mental flexibility. Being dynamic in your motivations rather than rigid might just be the greatest predictor of a thriving life.